Captain Jake Miller stood at the wide window of his mining ship Discovery and looked out at the rocks floating in space. The asteroid field stretched as far as his eyes could see. Big rocks and small rocks drifted slowly in the darkness between the stars. Jake had been working in this field for 8 years now, and he knew every rock by heart. But today something felt different. The radio buzzed with the voice of his friend Tom Brady, who was working on another mining ship called the Rock Hunter. Tom was excited about finding a new vein of rare metals in asteroid K457. Jake smiled as he listened to Tom talk about how much money they would make from this find. Money was always important to the miners, but Jake knew there were bigger things happening out here than just digging for metals. Jake pressed a button on his control panel and spoke into his headset. He told Tom that he would come help with the mining operation later. But first Jake had to check on something else. He turned his ship toward a large asteroid that looked just like all the others. The rock was dark gray and covered with small craters from millions of years of floating in space. To anyone watching, it looked like just another worthless rock, but Jake knew better. He flew his ship to a hidden opening in the asteroid and typed a secret code into his computer. The rock began to split open like a giant mouth. Inside was not solid stone, but a huge hollow space filled with bright lights and metal walls. Jake flew his ship into the opening, and the rock closed behind him like it had never opened at all. Inside the asteroid, Jake could see hundreds of people working. They wore simple mining clothes, but they were not digging for metals. Instead, they were building something much bigger and more important. Giant machines moved pieces of metal as big as buildings. Sparks flew from welding torches as workers joined massive sheets of steel together. The sound of hammering and drilling echoed through the hollow space. Jake parked his ship and walked through a long tunnel that led to the command center. The tunnel was lined with thick metal walls and bright white lights. Along the way, he passed other workers who nodded at him with serious faces. Everyone here knew they were part of something secret and dangerous. They were building weapons of war disguised as simple mining operations. Admiral Lisa Carter was waiting for Jake in the command center. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp blue eyes. Lisa had been a military officer for 30 years before she was chosen to lead this secret project. She stood in front of a huge screen that showed maps of the entire asteroid field. Red dots marked the location of every fake asteroid that was really a hidden warship. Lisa looked at Jake and smiled. She told him that the work was going well. In the past month, they had finished building 3 more planet-sized warships. Each ship was as big as a small moon, but looked exactly like a natural asteroid from the outside. The aliens who ruled the galaxy had no idea that humans were building the largest fleet of warships in galactic history, right under their noses. Jake asked Lisa about the other species in the galaxy. The Zephyrians thought they were so smart with their golden ships and fancy technology. The Korvaxi were always starting fights and bragging about how strong they were. Both alien races looked down on humans as weak and stupid. They gave humans permission to mine asteroids because they thought it was the only thing humans were good for. Lisa laughed and said the aliens were in for a big surprise. She walked over to another screen that showed the inside of one of the completed warships. The screen displayed endless hallways filled with weapons bigger than most alien battleships. Fusion reactors that could power entire cities provided energy for the massive guns. Shields strong enough to protect against planet-killing weapons covered the hull. Engineer Ryan Brooks joined them at the screen. Ryan was a short man with thick glasses who had spent his whole life working with machines. He was very proud of the fusion reactors he had designed for the warships. Ryan explained that each reactor could produce more power than anything the aliens had ever built. The technology was completely human, and the aliens had never seen anything like it. Ryan showed them pictures of the reactor cores on his tablet computer. The cores glowed with bright blue light and hummed with incredible energy. He said that 15 years of careful work had gone into making them perfect. The reactors were safe and reliable, but they could also be turned into weapons if needed. A single reactor could destroy an entire alien fleet if it was overloaded correctly. Dr. Amy Rodriguez walked up to the group carrying a thick folder full of papers. Amy was the smartest scientist on the project, and she kept track of all the technical details. She told them that the calculations were finally complete. According to her numbers, the human fleet now had 57 planet-sized warships hidden throughout the asteroid field. Each ship could hold millions of people and had enough weapons to level entire star systems. Amy opened her folder and showed them the latest reports. The disguises were working perfectly. Alien patrol ships flew through the asteroid field every week, but they never suspected anything. To their sensors, the human warships looked exactly like normal rocks. Even when alien ships flew very close, they could not tell the difference between a real asteroid and a fake one. Lisa asked Amy about the weapon systems. Amy smiled and said that each warship had enough firepower to destroy 100 alien battleships. The main guns were hidden inside fake craters on the surface of each asteroid. When the time came to fight, the craters would open and reveal massive cannons that could shoot across entire solar systems. The aliens would never see the attack coming. Jake looked around the command center and felt proud of what they had accomplished. For 30 years, the galaxy had treated humans like children who needed to be watched and controlled. The aliens made all the important decisions and humans just had to follow orders. They were only allowed to mine asteroids in the outer parts of the galaxy where nothing important happened. But now everything was about to change. The mining ships that the aliens ignored were actually the key to the greatest military secret in galactic history. Every day, more workers arrived to help with the construction. Every week, another warship was completed and added to the hidden fleet. The aliens thought they were watching humans dig for rocks, but they were actually watching humans prepare for war. Lisa told the group that they needed to be patient for just a little longer. The fleet was almost ready, but timing was everything. When humans finally revealed their warships to the galaxy, it had to be at exactly the right moment. The aliens needed to learn that they had badly underestimated the human species. Soon the whole galaxy would know that humans were much more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. As Jake prepared to return to his mining ship, he looked one more time at the secret warship being built around him. The massive metal walls stretched up into the darkness above his head. Somewhere in that darkness were weapons that could change the fate of every species in the galaxy. The quiet years of preparation were almost over, and soon the stars themselves would tremble before the power of humanity. Commander Alex Thompson was drinking his morning coffee when the emergency alarm started screaming through the command center. The red lights flashed on and off as he ran to his station inside the hidden asteroid base. His hands shook as he pressed the button to receive the incoming message. What he saw on the screen made his blood run cold and his coffee cup fell to the floor. The message was from New Terra, humanity's largest colony world. The planet was home to 12 million human civilians who lived peaceful lives farming and building cities. Alex watched in horror as the video showed Korvaxi warships dropping bombs on schools and hospitals. Huge explosions lit up the sky as alien fighters destroyed everything humans had built over 50 years of hard work. Captain Helen Foster was the first to reach Alex at his station. Helen commanded one of the massive hidden warships called Earth's Vengeance. She looked at the screen and her face turned white with anger. The Korvaxi were not just attacking military targets. They were killing children and families who had never hurt anyone. The alien attackers were laughing as they burned human cities to the ground. More people gathered around the screen as the terrible news continued. Engineer Ryan Brooks stood with his mouth open in shock. Dr. Amy Rodriguez covered her eyes but could not stop watching. The Korvaxi commander, General Vextar, appeared on the screen wearing his black armor and speaking in his cruel voice. He said that humans were like insects that needed to be stepped on. General Vexitar announced that humanity had exactly one solar cycle to surrender completely, or every human in the galaxy would be killed. He said the Korvaxi coalition had grown tired of allowing weak species to exist. From now on, humans would work as slaves for their alien masters or they would die. The message ended with more pictures of burning human cities and crying children. Admiral Lisa Carter walked into the room just as the message finished playing. Lisa's face was like stone, but her eyes burned with a cold fire that made everyone step back. She had spent 30 years preparing for this moment, and now it had finally come. The aliens had made the biggest mistake in galactic history by attacking innocent human civilians. Lisa asked Alex to contact the Galactic Council immediately. Maybe the other alien species would help stop the Korvaxi attack. Alex sent the emergency message and waited for a reply. When the answer came back, it was even worse than they had feared. The Galactic Council refused to help humans and said the attack was justified because humans were taking up too much space in the galaxy. The Zephyrian Emperor Kreltos appeared on the screen, wearing his golden robes and smiling with his sharp teeth. He said that the Korvaxi were doing good work by cleaning up the galaxy. Humans were like weeds that grew too fast and needed to be cut down. The Emperor even offered to help the Korvaxi find more human colonies to destroy. Lisa turned off the screen and looked around the room at all the shocked faces. She told everyone that the time for hiding was over. For 30 years, humans had been patient and peaceful while building their secret fleet. They had hoped the aliens would treat them fairly, but that hope was now dead. The galaxy had chosen war, and humans would give them exactly what they wanted. Captain Helen Foster asked Lisa for permission to begin the activation sequence. Helen's warship Earth's Vengeance was the largest in the fleet, and had been waiting for this moment for 15 years. Lisa looked at Helen and nodded slowly. She gave the order that would change galactic history forever. All 57 hidden warships were to power up their fusion cores and prepare for battle. Helen ran to her ship and climbed aboard with her crew of 5,000 people. The massive vessel had been disguised as asteroid XR991 for so long that some crew members had never seen it without its rocky shell. Helen sat in the captain's chair and pressed the big red button that started the activation process. Deep inside the fake asteroid, the fusion reactors began to hum with deadly power. All across the asteroid field, the same thing was happening. Lieutenant Colonel Brad Martinez coordinated the fleet activation from the Central Command Center. His job was to make sure all the ships powered up at exactly the same time. Brad watched his screens as one by one the hidden warships came to life after decades of sleeping in the darkness. The rocky shells that had hidden the warships for so many years began to crack and fall away. Huge pieces of fake stone drifted into space as the real ships underneath were revealed. Each warship was the size of a small moon and covered with enough weapons to destroy entire star systems. The metal hulls gleamed like silver in the starlight. Captain Tony Clark commanded the warship Human Pride and watched through his window as his ship shed its disguise. The fake craters on the surface opened up to reveal massive cannons that could shoot across solar systems. Shield generators powered up and surrounded each ship with protective energy fields. Engine ports opened and began glowing with blue fire. Dr. Amy Rodriguez monitored all the technical systems from her station. Every fusion reactor was working perfectly, and all weapon systems were coming online without problems. The ships that had been built in secret over 30 years were performing exactly as designed. Amy smiled as she realized that human engineering was about to shock the entire galaxy. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of her flagship Titan's Wrath and watched the transformation of her fleet. The asteroid field that had looked empty and worthless now revealed itself as the most powerful military force in galactic history. 57 planet-sized warships hung in space like sleeping giants awakening from a long dream. Lisa opened a communication channel to all ships in the fleet. Her voice was calm, but everyone could hear the anger underneath. She reminded them of the burning cities on New Terra and the innocent children who had died. She told them that humanity had tried to live in peace, but the aliens had forced them to choose war instead. The destination was already programmed into every ship's computer. The human fleet would travel to the Corvaxi home system and deliver justice for the massacre on New Terra. General Vextar had promised to destroy humanity within one solar cycle, but he was about to learn that humans were much more dangerous than he had ever imagined. Lisa gave the order to move out, and the massive ships began to turn toward their target. The engines that had never been used before roared to life and pushed the planet-sized vessels forward. For the first time in 30 years, the human fleet was moving, and the galaxy was about to discover what happens when you attack the wrong species. As the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Lisa thought about all the years of preparation and sacrifice. The miners who had worked in secret, the engineers who had built impossible machines, and the soldiers who had waited patiently for this day. The age of human weakness was ending, and the age of human strength was about to begin with fire and thunder. Fleet Admiral Kate Wilson stood on the command bridge of the massive warship Prometheus Rising as space around her began to twist and bend. The human fleet was dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of Corvaxi territory, and Kate could feel her heart beating fast with excitement. After 30 years of hiding, it was time for the galaxy to see what humans could really do when they were angry. The stars stopped moving, and suddenly 57 planet-sized warships appeared in normal space like ghosts becoming solid. Each ship was as big as a small moon and covered with weapons that gleamed in the light of the Corvaxi sun. The human fleet stretched across space in a perfect formation that had been practiced in secret for decades. On the planet Corvaxi Prime below them, the alien defense systems started screaming warnings. General Vexitar was eating his victory dinner when his officers burst into the room with terror on their faces. They told him that impossible ships had appeared in their space and the sensors could not understand what they were seeing. The readings showed vessels larger than anything in galactic history. Vexitar laughed and said his officers were being foolish. The primitive humans did not have any real warships. Their largest vessels were tiny mining boats that could barely leave their own solar system. But when Vexitar looked at the screen, his laughter died in his throat and his dinner fell from his hands onto the floor. Supreme Commander, Zaxthor was the leader of all Korvaxi military forces, and he prided himself on never showing fear. But as he stared at the human fleet through his command center window, his hands began to shake. The ships hanging in space above his world were bigger than his largest battle stations. Each human vessel could probably destroy his entire fleet without breaking sweat. The Korvaxi defense fleet scrambled to respond to the threat. 300 of their best warships launched from military bases across the planet. These were the ships that had destroyed New Terra and killed 12 million innocent humans. The Korvaxi pilots were confident and eager to fight because they had never lost a battle in their entire lives. But as the Korvaxi fleet approached the human ships, they began to slow down and then stop completely. The alien pilots could not believe what their sensors were telling them. Each human warship was not just bigger than their entire fleet put together. The power readings coming from the human ships were off all their charts and measuring devices. Captain Tony Clark commanded the human warship Human Pride, and he watched the alien fleet with cold satisfaction. These were the same ships that had bombed schools and hospitals on New Terra. Tony opened a communication channel to the Korvaxi fleet, and his voice was calm but filled with deadly promise. He told them they had exactly 1 minute to surrender or be destroyed. Supreme Commander Zaxthor received the message and felt his world turning upside down. The species he had always called weak insects were now giving him orders like he was a helpless child. The humans were not asking for mercy or begging for their lives. Instead, they were telling the mighty Korvaxi military to surrender or face the consequences. News of the human fleet spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On the golden world of Zephyria, Prime Emperor Kreltos was holding court when his advisors brought him the impossible reports. The Emperor's face turned pale as he read about ships the size of planets appearing in Korvaxi space. He had just finished praising the Korvaxi attack on New Terra that morning. Ambassador Diana Phillips had been waiting for this moment her entire career. Diana represented humanity at the Galactic Council, and she had endured years of insults and dismissive treatment from alien diplomats. Now she walked into the emergency council session with a smile on her face and a folder full of demands. In her hands, the council chamber was in chaos as representatives from dozens of alien species shouted questions and accusations at each other. The Korvaxi delegate was demanding military support to fight the human invasion. The Zephyrian ambassador was trying to distance his empire from their earlier support of the attack on New Terra. Everyone was talking, but nobody was listening. Diana stood up, and the entire chamber fell silent. She had never commanded this kind of attention before, and she enjoyed the feeling of power. Diana opened her folder and began reading humanity's ultimatum in a clear, strong voice that carried to every corner of the room. The terms were simple and not open for discussion or negotiation. First, all alien military forces would immediately withdraw from human space and never return without permission. Second, the Korvaxi coalition would pay full compensation for the destruction of New Terra and the murder of 12 million innocent civilians. Third, humanity would be recognized as a major galactic power with full voting rights in all council decisions. Diana looked around the room at all the shocked alien faces and continued reading. Any species that refused to accept these terms would be considered an enemy of humanity and dealt with accordingly. The human fleet was prepared to enforce these demands with whatever force was necessary. The age of treating humans like children was officially over. Back in Korvaxi space, Admiral Sam Turner was preparing to demonstrate human resolve. Sam commanded the warship Freedom's Call, and he had been chosen to show the aliens what happened to those who murdered human children. His target was a military base on the moon of Korvaxi Prime, where the attack on New Terra had been planned. The main cannon of Freedom's Call was as long as a city block and powered by a fusion reactor that could light up an entire planet. Sam gave the order to fire, and a beam of pure energy shot across space faster than thought itself. The Korvaxi military base simply disappeared in a flash of white light that could be seen from the planet below. Supreme Commander, Zaxthor watched his most important military installation vanish without a trace, and knew that resistance was hopeless. The human weapon had not just destroyed the base. It had vaporized the entire moon the base was built on. Nothing remained except glowing particles drifting in space where solid rock had existed seconds before. All across the galaxy, alien governments received the same message at exactly the same moment. The primitive humans they had ignored and dismissed now possessed the most powerful fleet in galactic history. The species that had been mining asteroids for 30 years had actually been building weapons of unimaginable destruction. Fleet Admiral Kate Wilson opened a channel to broadcast her message to every world in the galaxy. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of absolute authority. She told the aliens that humanity had tried to live in peace, but they had chosen war instead. Now they would learn what it meant to fight a species that had been preparing for this moment for 3 decades, the galaxy that had woken up that morning with humans as the weakest species would go to sleep that night knowing that humans were now the strongest. The balance of power had shifted completely in the space of a single day, and nothing would ever be the same again. The age of human dominance had begun with thunder and lightning. Captain Lucy Barnes stood on the balcony of the former Korvaxi government building and looked out at the city below. 6 months had passed since the human fleet had arrived, and everything had changed completely. The streets that once echoed with the march of Korvaxi soldiers now buzzed with the quiet efficiency of human administrators working to rebuild a broken world. Lucy had been chosen as the new governor of Korvaxi Prime because she understood how to be firm but fair with defeated enemies. The Korvaxi people had expected humans to treat them with the same cruelty they had shown to others. Instead, they found that humans were surprisingly merciful to those who accepted the new order peacefully. The former Korvaxi military had been completely disbanded without a single shot being fired. When Supreme Commander Zaxthor saw the true size of the human fleet, he had immediately ordered all his forces to surrender. The alien soldiers had laid down their weapons and returned to their families rather than face the planet-sized human warships. General Vextar, the monster who had ordered the attack on New Terra, was now in a human prison waiting for his trial. The Korvaxi people had been shocked to learn that humans planned to give him a fair trial instead of simply executing him. This act of justice rather than revenge had impressed many aliens who began to see humans in a completely different light. The Zephyrian Empire had tried to organize a coalition against humanity, but their efforts had failed miserably. Admiral Chris Warren commanded the fortress ship Terra's Shield, and he had been stationed near the Zephyrian border to discourage any foolish attacks. When the Zephyrians tested human resolve by sending a small fleet, Chris had demonstrated the power of human weapons in a way nobody would ever forget. Chris had chosen an uninhabited moon in the neutral zone for his demonstration. The moon was roughly the same size as the largest Zephyrian battle station and made a perfect target. With representatives from dozens of alien species watching, Chris had ordered his ship to fire a single shot from its main weapon. The moon had simply ceased to exist. The alien observers had watched in stunned silence as the moon was reduced to glowing particles in less than a second. The weapon that destroyed it had been fired from a distance that most alien ships could not even travel in a full day. The message was clear. Human technology was so far advanced that resistance was not just futile but suicidal. After seeing this demonstration, the coalition against humanity had collapsed overnight. Species that had been eager to fight alongside the Zephyrians suddenly remembered urgent business elsewhere in the galaxy. The Draknari Republic switched sides and asked to become human allies. The Helion Confederacy offered to share their trade routes with human merchants. President Nicole Hayes had been elected to lead humanity's new galactic government, and she addressed the reformed Galactic Council from the bridge of the flagship New Horizon. The council chamber had been moved to a human ship because many alien species no longer felt safe meeting on their own worlds. They preferred the protection that came with being near the human fleet. Nicole announced the new rules that would govern galactic civilization. Trade would be conducted using a currency backed by human industrial power, instead of the old Zephyrian system that had favored the wealthy over the poor. Shipping lanes would be protected by human patrols to ensure that pirates and raiders could not threaten peaceful merchants. The most important change was the establishment of the Human Protection Zone that covered over half the galaxy. Any species within this zone would be defended by human forces against aggression from outside powers. In return, these protected species would contribute resources and manpower to help maintain galactic peace and prosperity. Dr. Kevin Ross had been appointed as the head of the new Galactic Science Consortium, and he was amazed by how quickly alien attitudes had changed. Species that had once refused to share even basic information with humans were now offering their most advanced technologies in exchange for human protection. The scientific progress of the past 6 months exceeded anything achieved in the previous century. Kevin's laboratories were filled with alien scientists eager to learn from human fusion, technology, and gravitational manipulation systems. The humans shared their knowledge freely with peaceful species, while keeping the most dangerous weapons away from those who might misuse them. This policy of controlled cooperation was creating a golden age of scientific discovery. The former Emperor Kreltos of the Zephyrian Empire had been stripped of his title, but allowed to keep his life. He now served as a cultural advisor to help humans understand the complex history of galactic politics. Kreltos often admitted that his people had been fools to underestimate humanity for so long. Kreltos told human administrators about the old system where strong species bullied weak ones, and wars erupted every few years over resources and territory. He explained how the galaxy had been trapped in cycles of violence because nobody was powerful enough to enforce lasting peace. The arrival of the human fleet had broken these cycles forever. Captain Helen Foster commanded the massive warship, Earth's Vengeance, as it patrolled the Outer Rim territories where pirates and raiders had once operated freely. The criminal organizations that had terrorized peaceful traders for decades had either surrendered or fled to the far edges of the galaxy where even humans rarely traveled. Helen's ship was so large that it served as a mobile base for dozens of smaller human vessels. When distress calls came in from merchant ships or colony worlds, Helen could dispatch rescue forces that arrived within hours instead of days. The mere presence of her ship in a star system was enough to deter most criminal activity. The economic changes brought about by human leadership were even more dramatic than the military ones. Human industrial technology was so advanced that the cost of manufactured goods had dropped by 90% across the galaxy. Species that had lived in poverty for generations suddenly found themselves with access to clean water, abundant food, and advanced medical care. Admiral Lisa Carter reviewed the progress reports from her command center and smiled with satisfaction. The galaxy that had dismissed humans as primitive insects was now thriving under human guidance. Crime rates had fallen to historic lows. Trade was booming, and for the first time in recorded history, there were no active wars anywhere in known space. The transformation had been so complete that many younger aliens could barely remember what life had been like before humans revealed their hidden fleet. The old system of constant conflict and suffering seemed like ancient history. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the species you underestimate the most can become your greatest salvation. Admiral Paul Grant stood on the observation deck of the Titan's Legacy and watched the construction of New Earth Colony as it took shape on the planet below. 5 years had passed since the Great Revelation, and the galaxy had become a completely different place. The massive human warships that had once hidden in asteroid fields now served as mobile cities, carrying millions of people to new worlds across the stars. Paul's ship was one of the newer vessels built after the war, incorporating alien technologies that had been freely shared once their former owners realized cooperation was better than destruction. The ship was even larger than the original planet-sized dreadnoughts and contained entire forests, lakes, and cities within its hull. Children who had been born on board had never set foot on a planet but lived full and happy lives among the stars. Captain Michelle Baker commanded the newest addition to the human fleet called Humanity's Dawn. Her ship was the most advanced vessel ever built and represented the pinnacle of combined human and alien engineering. The fusion reactors that powered her ship were so efficient, they could run for 1,000 years without refueling. The weapon systems were so powerful they could crack planets in half with a single shot. Michelle often walked through the ship's many levels and marveled at what humanity had accomplished. The engineering sections contained factories that could build anything needed by the crew. The agricultural decks produced enough food to feed millions of people. The residential areas were so comfortable that many crew members forgot they were living on a warship instead of a peaceful planet. The former Emperor Kreltos had become one of humanity's most trusted advisors, and he spent his days helping to establish new colonies on distant worlds. The proud Zephyrian ruler who had once commanded a galactic empire now worked as a simple administrator, making sure alien refugees had food and shelter. He often said this work gave him more satisfaction than ruling ever had. Kreltos frequently met with groups of young aliens who had grown up under human rule and could barely understand the old system of constant warfare. When he told them stories about the bad old days when strong species attacked weak ones, the young people looked at him like he was describing fairy tales. They could not imagine a galaxy where humans were not in charge keeping everyone safe. Commander Rachel Green led the Human Colonial Development Program and oversaw the expansion of human civilization to over 2,000 star systems. Every month, new colonies were established on worlds that had been empty or underdeveloped. The human fleet provided protection and resources while alien species contributed their knowledge of local conditions and environments. Rachel's favorite project was the New Terra Memorial World, where the families of those killed in the Korvaxi attack had been given beautiful new homes. The planet was more lovely than the original New Terra had ever been, with crystal-clear rivers, towering mountains, and cities that seemed to grow naturally from the landscape. It served as a reminder that even from terrible tragedy, something beautiful could be built. The secret that had been hidden in the asteroid fields for 30 years had become the foundation of the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known. The mining ships that aliens had ignored were remembered as the humble beginning of an empire that now stretched across half the known universe. Museums on dozens of worlds displayed models of the original disguised warships to teach future generations about human ingenuity. Captain Jake Miller, who had been one of the first to work on the secret project, now served as the director of the Galactic History Institute. His job was to make sure the true story of humanity's rise was preserved for all time. Jake often gave lectures to mixed audiences of humans and aliens about the importance of never judging others by their appearance. Jake's favorite part of his lectures was showing pictures of the old asteroid field where it all began. He would point to images of simple mining ships working among ordinary-looking rocks and then reveal the incredible warships that had been hidden beneath the surface. The audiences always gasped in amazement when they realized how completely the aliens had been fooled. Dr. Amy Rodriguez had become the head of the Galactic Science Council and worked with researchers from hundreds of different species. The technologies that humans had developed in secret were now being used to solve problems across the galaxy. Diseases that had plagued alien races for centuries were cured using human medical techniques. Planets that had been dying from pollution were restored to health with human environmental technology. Amy's greatest achievement was the development of faster-than-light communication, networks that connected every world in human space. Families separated by thousands of light years could now talk to each other in real time. Scientists could share discoveries instantly across the galaxy. The network had made the vast empire feel like a single connected community. Engineer Ryan Brooks continued to design new fusion reactors that were cleaner and more powerful than anything built before. His latest creation could power an entire star system using fuel no larger than a grain of sand. Ryan often looked back on his early work with the secret warships and smiled at how primitive those first reactors seemed compared to what was possible now. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson in its history: never underestimate a species just because they appear weak or primitive. The humans who had seemed like harmless miners turned out to be the most dangerous warriors in the universe when their patience finally ran out. But they had also proven to be the most generous rulers when former enemies chose cooperation over conflict. Admiral Lisa Carter, now in her 70s, served as the supreme commander of human forces and looked back on her life with deep satisfaction. The young officer who had started the secret project decades ago had lived to see humanity become the greatest power in galactic history. The asteroid field where she had hidden her first warships was now a sacred site, visited by millions of pilgrims every year. Lisa's final act as commander was to establish the Galactic Peace Treaty that formally ended all warfare between species. The document was signed aboard her flagship by representatives of every major civilization in known space. For the first time in recorded history, the entire galaxy was officially at peace, and would remain so as long as humans were there to protect it. The children who grew up in this new galaxy would never know the fear and suffering that had plagued their ancestors. They would live in a universe where humans kept the peace, protected the innocent, and made sure that the strong could never again prey upon the weak. The secret fleet that had started it all would be remembered forever as the moment when humanity stepped out of the shadows. Future generations would tell stories about the quiet miners who built warships, the size of planets, and changed the course of galactic history in a single day. They would remember that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one you never see coming, and sometimes the greatest friend is the one you never thought to respect. Humanity had proven that patience, preparation, and determination could overcome any odds. The galaxy had finally learned why humans were the most remarkable species in the universe, not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they never gave up, and they never forgot their friends or their enemies. The age of human dominance would last for thousands of years, built on the foundation of 57 ships that nobody saw coming until it was far too late to stop them.